You are listening to 100X Gaming on the 100X podcast. Today, we are joined by one of the most awesome games building in this space. I've wanted to have you guys on for a really long time, Dan. I mentioned to you off camera that I've got a MetalCore sticker on my water bottle that I drink out of every day. My son has a matching MetalCore sticker. You guys were one of the first games that I followed in Web3 when we were transitioning from like just being DeFi investors to really caring about the Web3 gaming space. You were like probably maybe even the first. I don't remember that far back, but I do remember you guys were one of the very first games that we looked at. So I'm really stoked to get you guys on. Do you want to introduce what it is you guys are crafting at MetalCore? Before we dig into everything this episode has to offer, we want to highlight the awesome partners who sponsor this podcast and make it possible for us to work full-time on 100X. They're legends, and we appreciate them for supporting us. Let's talk about Reactor, a proof-of-work blockchain that introduces a brand new economic model, deep in mining software, a gaming distribution platform, the RKR token, and their game, Minions of Steel, that's proving their thesis by seamlessly integrating proof-of-work token mining with gaming. Through allowing players to mine with their own GPU while playing, not only do they essentially make gaming free, they make software free, and they present an AI-proof income for everyone. If you want to take a glimpse into the future and get there early, explore Reactor's ecosystem at the link below. Everybody is chasing the sweet nectar of played airdrop. Could the Beacon potentially be the most fun iteration of the meta thus far? The Beacon is a collision of 3 game genres at once. Think dungeon crawler like Hades, world builder like Animal Crossing, and social MMO like RuneScape. Right now, you can complete quests to unlock the token airdrop and whitelist through our New Frontiers quest link in this episode's description. Follow the Beacon on Twitter for deets on the rite of passagement and the game's global launch. And let us know in the comments how many of the bosses you can actually beat.
Absolutely, yeah. So thanks for having me on. My name is Dan Nicolaitis. I'm the CTO of Studio 369, and we are making MetalCore, which is a AAA third-person shooter, massively open world, mechs, infantry, aircraft, tanks, all on a giant battlefield. So very reminiscent of games like Titanfall 2, Battlefield, Battlefront. So big multiplayer PvP with some PvE elements as well. Just a whole bunch of mix of different stuff going on in a huge chaotic battlefield.
Yeah, I dig it. It reminds me, it gives me like very like Halo meets Battlefield vibes. I haven't played a ton. I've played a little bit, but that's the vibe that I get from it. And I grew up playing. I mean, the game that made me fall in love with gaming was Halo. And so you guys are winning with those vibes. You mentioned PvE and PvP. What does that look like?
Yeah, we have a bunch of different types of modes. So the setting of the game is on the planet of Kerberos, and there's 3 different factions. So as a player, you jump into the game, you have to choose one of the 3 main factions in the game: Metal Punks, Gear Breakers, or Holy Corporation. Right. So once you jump into one of these factions, you're kind of thrust into this massive territory war, and the territory war takes place over like a bunch of different potential scenarios. So there are some scenarios that are very focused on kind of infantry, small scale infantry combat, and then might be some scenarios that are focused on aerial combat, and then some that are just huge armor battles between mechs and tanks on both sides, and then some where it's really just kind of like skirmishes and guerrilla tactics where you're jumping in and kind of doing more campaign style small missions, right? So we're really shooting to have like a lot of different pacings of different modes for different players. We know that not everybody likes just constant frenetic PvP, so we want you always to be able to kind of like, if you want to take a break from like massive PvP action and you want to do something a little bit more chill, there's something like that in MetalCore for you as well, right? So all those different kind of changes of pace that you might be looking for, we have.
Do all of those different modes that are like essentially happening at the same time, do they further the story in the world together?
Yeah. So what so we're entering closed beta 3. So right now we're really focusing on kind of the smaller, more immediate kind of game loops. that is to say, jumping into a server, having the missions feel fun, having a single gameplay session feel fun. But definitely one of our overarching goals in terms of the total development, like final product of the game, is to have it feel like it's a real like months long seasonal territory war between these three factions, where everything that you're doing furthers the cause of you kind of gaining territory and winning the overall war. And then of course with that comes huge prizes at the end of every season. So you're going to want to figure out what it is that you're best at. What's your best role? Do you want to focus on being a sniper in PvP session based matches, or are you just like really good at accomplishing missions with a small squad in PvX, right? And so choose that role, or maybe bounce between different roles, and then eventually, hopefully, you can push your faction to victory.
Dope. I dig that. I think it's. Oh, go ahead, Caesar.
I have a quick question here on this topic of sort of gameplay and everything. With that idea in mind of everything you talked about in terms of like how the game is supposed to feel over the the lasting months over the season, what kind of player are you do you think would really enjoy this game? What kind of things would they be doing throughout the day that you think that like, oh yeah, this is the perfect kind of player for what we're trying to do?
Yeah, I mean, we're really shooting for the feel of an MMO where you have these different pace. Like, if you guys ever played World of Warcraft, right? Like, one of my lasting like memories of World of Warcraft is I would be running daily missions, or maybe I'd queue for a raid with my, or I'd be preparing for a raid with my guild or something like that, and then in between I would queue for PvP battlegrounds, right? And so that kind of feeling of I might be doing this one thing that's a little bit more chill, but then I have to be prepared for this highly competitive player versus player scenario that I queue into. I do that for maybe 20 minutes, and then I go back to some other chill thing, and then like sometime down the road I'm like, all of this stuff that I've been doing throughout the week has been preparing me for like the Friday night raids where my entire guild would jump in with like 30 people and try and take out some raid boss, right? So that's kind of like the idea that we're going for, where you might be doing very different things in any moment of the day, like throughout the week, but all of these different things are kind of factoring into the same like overarching loop of helping your barony, which is our in-game guilds, helping your faction, and then ultimately just progressing and getting to the end game.
One more follow-up question to that in terms of gameplay, because I'm huge into the idea of like MMOs and really feeling like I'm really part of something big. Because at the end of the day, that's the sort of feel that I feel like MetalCore is going for, like a big group of people battling it out with a couple other big group of people and seeing who comes out victorious at the end. With that in mind, how is progression like? Am I progressing through my character's storyline, and am I getting stronger through the PvP aspects? Am I getting stronger from doing the missions on my own? Is there a balance between the both? What can I expect as a player in terms of progression?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So both, you can progress through either one of those. Our idea though is that you know um, kind of PvX PvE missions are where you're kind of consolidating your resources. You're preparing for the big PvP sessions, right? So the PvX and PvE missions are a little bit more chill. They're a little bit easier. They're kind of hard to fail. You might take some players longer to kind of max out their let's say storage of all their minerals and their materials and their credits and stuff, and then but you need all of those resources once you go into a PvP session. Once you go into a PvP session, you're basically bringing all the units that you have with you into that PvP session, and if one of them is blown up, you need to like spend resources to repair it, right? So you need to it's kind of like you're spending the a couple hours preparing, and then you go into a huge PvP session. Depending on how many units you have, you might have a stable of only two or three, or you might have a garage of like 50 tanks, right? So or mechs or aircraft. So that's kind of where the progression comes in, is like individual units on a case by case basis. You're going to be playing with that unit, leveling it up, kitting out its loadout. But over like a long span of time, what you're actually going to be doing is building up this huge stable that you could all bring with you into a PvP session, so that you have kind of whatever the situation calls for. Do you need air support right now? Do you need a tank? Do you need something more stealthy and light? Are you trying to run the flag, or are you guarding your base, right? Like, which thing do you need? And like early on, players won't have that as much ability to choose that. They might have to pick one thing to specialize, and then late game they may be able to have like, I have everything for every situation, right? So that's kind of the concept of our progression system.
Dang, that's really interesting because I mean, yeah, as you mentioned, I can really imagine, especially with someone starting off, maybe they only have access to one or two characters, a couple of you sort of weapons and things that they could use in battle. But as you continue playing throughout the time, you definitely are going to grow a nice big arsenal in order to help you in whatever situation you are in. Are these arsenals of weapons and inventory resetting after every closed beta, or are you letting people sort of start to build their arsenal through these betas and sort of going to keep that to launch?
So that's where the kind of Web3 comes into it. So we are enabling players to kind of craft, first of all, purchase NFTs as their units, and then be able to craft their NFTs or their Web2 units that they kind of create in game and convert those into Web3 NFT units. And obviously those NFT units will not get wiped in between closed beta. Like that's one of the benefits of ultimately owning an NFT unit. We do kind of reserve the ability in closed beta to wipe progress in certain capacities, but we never want to wipe progress for any player that has kind of spent money to kind of get into the game. So we players clearly are already like buying NFTs and they're going to be buying NFTs. And so if you own an NFT, that will never be wiped. So that's kind of like it's almost kind of like a head start. So every time we were to do a wipe, if you owned NFTs, you would kind of start that next cycle with those NFTs. Once we're out of closed beta, we won't be wiping anymore. But during the period of closed beta, we still may.
Yeah, it's like balancing and all of that. That makes
Right.
sense. I have one more question. I want to get into the Web3 aspects and the closed beta, but I have one more question. Just like on, I nerd out about the lore of worlds when I get into them. And looking at your guys' factions, the 3 factions, I chose the Metal Punks for myself. It feels like the Holy Corporation is like just the most capitalistic society that essentially turns capitalism into a religion. Then you've got the Gear Breakers that they're like, I watched Star Trek growing up. They're like communist Borgs is what they remind me of.
Kind of,
where everything is like societal. There is no independence. Everything is like, nope, we are one unit. And you got the Metal Punks, which feels like tribal anarchy. What was the inspiration for those three factions, and which faction are you playing as, Dan?
Oh, that's a great question. All right, so we get a lot of let me lay a little bit more of the backstory since I'm with some kind of sci-fi nerds here. I gather.
Okay.
So the idea of MetalCore is that humanity had these giant colony ships that they were going to send to this distant star, and there were 4 of them. And there was a calamity en route where the cryostasis failed on 3 of the ships. So, and also communications between all 3 were knocked out. So this was a 1,000-year journey, and they were basically stuck on the ship, having generations and generations of people forgot all Earth history, completely devolved into like whatever random challenges they had on their ship. Like some of them had no food, some had no power. So whatever the challenges were on the ship kind of molded their societies. And when they landed, they ended up completely different from one another. And like, we cannot see eye to eye. There's only going to be war, right? And then you as a player take part of somebody who wakes up on the 4th ship from cryostasis, expecting there to be this like utopia when you arrive, and actually it's like just this war that's been raging on the surface for 200 years, right? So we take a lot of our influence from stuff like Warhammer. Like definitely there's an element of the Imperium to like the Holy Corporation. There's a lot of like irreverence, like Borderlands style irreverence to the Metal Punks, right? Like where it's just like everybody's kind of crazy. Yeah, exactly right. So, and I think a lot of the Gear Breakers I would describe actually a little bit more like Bushido code, like samurai warriors who are like very honorable but also merciless, right? Like all they live for is war and proving themselves through battle and like being the best. And it's like I'm never going to stab you in the back, but I'm also I'm not going to like help you up if you fall down, right? Like that kind of idea. So I think there's a little bit for everyone in this universe, right? So ultimately, the biggest decision you'll have to make is really about who you're going to be fighting with, because when you pick one of these factions, the most important thing is like you're kind of with them trying to win these territory wars, and the prizes at the end of the seasons, right? The seasonal territory wars are going to be pretty big prizes. So, and it's going to amplify all the earnings that you had, like of our token throughout the course of the season. So you're really like you should be making a decision based on like who do I think has the best shot at winning, and then also like where am I going to like find that best fit for myself,
exactly.
Right?
Can you switch?
Yeah.
Factions.
You can switch. You can switch at with kind of a penalty to your the way our progression system works. You have individual units that you can level up, but your ability to kind of like advance your overall kind of garage capability is based on faction reputation. So when you switch, it's almost kind of like you're betraying your faction and you're going to another one. So you lose some chunk of that faction reputation. You have to like not start over from scratch, but like kind of you get a little bit of setback.
Sense.
So players aren't going to want to be doing that all the time, right? Like if you have to, you will, but like typically you won't.
Cool. That's dope. That makes sense. Go ahead,
I have a
Caesar.
quick question here on the sort of idea of like staying with your faction and choosing your faction based on, hey, this is probably my highest probability of winning at the end of the season. With MMOs, you see this very often that one faction, especially early on, gets a big advantage over everyone, and new players where they're like, well, this is a pretty easy sort of decision for me. I got to go with the one that already has like 70% probability of winning because they have most players or they have all the top players in their guild. How have you guys seen sort of this balance of people choosing factions and keeping that balance throughout the season in the closed betas? Have you guys ran into that issue of like one faction just dominating a server? Or have you guys been able to find a nice balance?
Yeah, it's a good question. We actually have seen it be a nice balance, and the reason why is because there's still kind of a limits on how many players on either side can enter in some of these scenarios. So if you have like 1,000 metal punks and 100 gear breakers, like those gear breakers are going to find matches way more often than the metal punks will, right? So it kind of regulates itself a little bit. To some degree, yes, you're more likely to win if you're on metal punks because they outnumber the other side a ton, but you individually are going to get far less rewards because you're going to be participating in fewer of the. So like even though that those 100 gear breakers might lose the overall territory war, they would individually participate in like 5 or 10 times as many battles as you would on metal punk, so they're just going to get a lot more rewards through that, right? And it's more fun, right? So
Yeah, we're
yeah,
here to play
I
a
mean, I
game.
think
If I can't play the matches, let me play
right,
with the matches.
right, exactly, yeah. So it regulates itself to a degree.
That makes sense. That's sick. I really like this world that you're building. I think back to a couple weeks ago, I saw, I'm sure you know who Spike is, the crypto gaming creator with Complexity. He put out a tweet the other day about, dude, when are we going to get like a good MMO that I can just grind with my community and with my friends that exists in Web3? Because it feels like so many of the games that we all enjoy, we play them for like 10 minutes and then they go offline. And it seems like you guys are positioning yourselves to fill that gap in a really cool way. Because I mean, you reference WoW. I would say, from my perspective, maybe it's anecdotal, but in Web3, it certainly feels like the average game is probably like hardcore on the fantasy genre. And so when I would think of MMO, I think of like classic WoW, but maybe skinned for Web3. You guys are taking
Right.
a totally different approach with a really large territory war style shooter that there's no one to even compare you to, is essentially the point I'm making. So I think you're positioned really well, and I'm excited to play more.
Awesome. Yeah. We're definitely going for kind of that Destiny 2 vibe, some of the Planet Side 2 vibe, right? Like
Yep.
that kind of idea. And it's a little bit of a mishmash, right? So we're still finding our footing and finding the exact like how long should sessions be? Like how many players are fun in this density or whatever, right? So we have a long way to go. We're still in closed beta, but by the time we're in open beta, we feel like and even our closed beta 3, which is starting in only 4 days, we plan to have our servers open 24/7. And people will be able to just play open-endedly for until we release our next major milestone, right? So yeah, we think we're really close to having something that is exactly that thing that you're talking about, where somebody can just
Yep.
jump in and grind and play it for months and months and months. Yeah.
Epic. Well, let's talk closed beta 3. That's what is happening right now. What changes when the gates open for closed beta 3?
Yeah, so a couple big things. One of the major things is that with closed beta 3 is going to come our TGE. So closed beta 3 is coming out on Thursday. Our TGE is announced for the following day, Friday. And with closed beta 3, you'll be able to start earning, being rewarded MCG, which is our token, on monthly, based on your monthly leaderboard kind of spots, right? So, and then that MCG can trade back into the game for our premium currency. So basically, this is kind of our economy loop: is you play the game, you get some monthly reward based on your leaderboard positions. You're able to use that to unlock new units or purchase premium currency, and then purchase packs of new items or stuff to level up your guys, basically, right? So that whole kind of economy loop will be going live on Friday. One of the other big things that we've done for CB3 that we didn't really have fully fledged in earlier closed betas is our PvP session based gameplay. So earlier it was all very open sandbox. Now we have very specific session based modes, and specifically we're working on an interesting new kind of PvP concept, which is we have these session based modes, but the objectives of each session are slightly different with some randomization in it, right? So, um, you know, there are a bunch of different potential objectives: capture the flag, high value target, capture points, domination, deathmatch, just where kills score points, etc. Right? All of these could be mixed and matched in different ways, and we've found that that actually drastically changes the way that you play. Right? If there's like three domination objectives active at once versus if there's like three capture the flag objectives active at once, you as a player are going to play very differently based on what's happening. Like, so every time you jump into a server, you're going to see in this intro video that plays, it's going to say do this, this, and that, and you might be like, oh, it's all capture the flag today, so I have to get all my fastest units, dust off my speedsters, right, and make sure I can get in and out, grab the flag wherever it lands, and hightail it back to my base. Whereas if it's base defense, you're going to be like, I'm going to pull out all my heavy mechs, right? So we've introduced this new mode, which I think is going to be a very interesting, like very dynamic way to play, and also encourage players to progress and unlock different things.
Yeah, that sounds like my cup of tea. I think that's how you get people. That's two. That's not an A. It's an upside down A. You get people to play consistently by introducing like significantly new modes, because I think the core game loop itself, that's one problem we've seen happen quite a bit in Web3, where like you have a lot of fun for a little bit and then you realize, oh man, there's just one mode to play. 12 hours of this.
Yeah.
I'm kind of bored. And so you guys injecting a bunch of new modes, and then B, actually launching that earning loop. We haven't seen, and I'll say this, we haven't seen in this phase of Web3 gaming. I think in the last bull market, we saw it with Axie, right? In this bull market, we've only seen it with airdrops. We haven't really seen a game go live and have a successful, maybe I'm missing something, so rage at me in the comics, but I don't think I've seen one with this successful economy earning loop where I can play and earn something and buy something and play and earn something and buy something. Done really well on a large scale. Actually, I'm thinking of one game now, but it's totally different genre. That would be WAGMI, but that's not a shooter in any capacity. So different genre, not competing with you guys. I think you're launching things that the space, not even just you guys, maybe not even just your player base, but the space is itching for. And I'm curious what your guys' goal is when it comes to, or maybe your guys' approach, maybe not goal, your approach when it comes to onboarding a bunch of players for closed beta 3. Have you guys also done any like UI or UX updates on maybe the Web3 side, because you're launching the TGE? I'm thinking about like how difficult it is for my friends who are not crypto natives to want to play games all the time in Web3. How are you guys handling that? Because obviously, as soon as you open closed beta 3, you're going to get an influx of players. And I know your last one saw something like 100,000 unique players or something. I forget what it was, but a crazy number. How do you maintain that level of players?
Yeah, so two things. One, we made it super easy to basically get into the game without requiring any sort of wallet. Like, we are partnered with Immutable, so we're using Immutable Passport in game for the monthly token rewards. And obviously, if you own an NFT, you're going to want to link your wallet so that you can use that NFT in game. But if you don't have to. And there's actually a traditional Web 2 path to playing this game. We're still in closed beta, so you can sign up to the waitlist to try to get a closed beta key, but also you can buy a kind of an early access founders pack, which we'll just have available for kind of normal credit card purchases in our store site. And with that, you just get a game key, and then you can go to the EGS, the Epic Game Store, and download the game and start playing it, and never have to connect a wallet and do it. That's kind of how almost every early access, free to play game goes, right? Where they're trying to restrict access. So we are still trying to restrict access to our closed beta. We're not ready for like, a million CCU yet. Like we're nowhere near that, right? But we are starting to kind of, we're trying to kind of grow responsibly and slowly, because we really believe that we have something that's really fun to play, and we're not dependent on this this kind of like initial hype bomb of everybody jumping in all at once to try to like spike the token price
Right.
and et cetera. Like, we believe that we can sustainably grow our user base over the next like 6 months, leading into our open beta and full access. So yeah, I think that's something that we're actively like looking at. But we've had great engagement on our during our earlier closed betas, and yeah, I think we're going to do pretty well continuing that. So.
Well
I gotta
said.
have a quick
Go
question
ahead,
for
Caesar.
you. Speaking on the access to closed beta 3, I remember we got access through Games GG as we're gamer holders ourselves, and we really love everything that Games is doing. Will we still have access if we had access previous betas, or will we need to get new access for this new beta?
No, you'll still have access. Yeah. So if you had if you already have access to the game on EGS, you'll still have access to it. But yeah, so we will be also starting some new primary sales of NFTs. So previously, the only NFT collections that we had were our Infantry Genesis collection on Layer 1. So we're going to be selling packs of vehicle NFTs on ZK EVM, on Immutable ZK EVM. So either a purchase through. So if you already own the game, if you already have a key for the game, you could still purchase those things through either one of those things and gain that kind of benefit to your account. But you could also just kind of continue to play where you had left off. Moving forward, if you didn't previously have access to the game, making one of those purchases will guarantee you to kind of get in during one of the closed betas.
Nice. That's awesome.
Cool. Dope. And those packs, those are the founders packs that you guys are launching that you're referencing. Are all of those living on, because I think I read there was 5 different levels or types of founders packs. Are those all living on Immutable?
So there's the founders packs, which are Web 2. And then
Got it.
there's a primary sale that's going to be coming on Immutable, and those will be living on Immutable.
Cool.
We may do another NFT collection that we haven't really announced yet. We may do future NFT collections on L1 depending on the specific like scale of them and who they're targeted towards. But for now, we're really focusing only on primary unit sales on Immutable.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. I want to talk, obviously, part of this closed beta 3 is the TGE. Because the loop or the token is going live, but B, having this economy loop. And I'm curious what the details of the TGE are. How do I get involved? If I'm listening right now and maybe I'm not a Genesis holder or something like that, what is the path for me to get involved with the TGE?
Yeah, so it's launching, like I said, on Friday. You can check out our Twitter. There's a bunch of exchanges that we're working with, and they are, as I said, check out MetalCore.gg or check us out at MetalCore Game on Twitter, and you'll see kind of like the ones that we retweeted and posted about. And yeah, you can jump in there, or you can just play the game. And there have been people who have been participating in all of our early closed betas and have held NFTs, and they're going to be getting a big chunk of the community claims like airdrop that we're going to be doing in the during TGE. And then obviously one of the main points of our token MCG is as a primary currency for the game that you earn through playing. So you could also just try to get into our game and then play throughout the month of July, and at the end of July we'll be doing our next monthly claim that you can participate in. So
cool. Yeah, makes sense. And you mentioned just now that the token itself, the MCG, what does the G stand for? MetalCore
MetalCore game. Yeah, we just call it MetalCore game.
Easy.
Yeah.
So the MCG token is specifically used inside the game. What is the difference between what the MCG token is used for and what the shards are used for?
So the MCG token actually just is used. It's our currency our token currency that we use to convert into shards. So it's basically like if you play any like mobile game, right? Their typical free to play monetization strategy is you spend X amount of dollars on a pack of gems, and then you use those gems in game to do all your things. So the analogy in MetalCore is instead of spending dollars for gems, you're spending MetalCore MCG for shards, right? So the MCG is the payment method. Shards are the premium currency, and then the premium currency is what you use in game to do all your. And the reason we do that is because otherwise you would have to, for every every expenditure of shards in game, you would have to basically do a wallet transaction, and you'd have to have to do a pop up. You'd have to assign the transaction, and it's just much easier for us to say, hey, why don't you just re-up your premium currency, however, whatever amount you want, do it once, get a big pack of 50 of them or 100 of them or something, and then you'll be able to play for a week without having to worry about clicking your wallet pop-up.
Can you buy shards with fiat, or is it only buyable with MCG?
So in the early stages of our launch, during our closed beta, and as we're launching TGE, we're trying to strike the right balance between revenue in so that we can continue to support the game, and then driving that value kind of to our token, so that that value eventually accumulates within the token. So early on, we have shard purchasing with fiat turned on, but at some point in the future, we plan to turn that off, so that the only way to purchase shards in the future and purchase units and stuff through primary sale is through our MCG token. So basically, we're trying to strike this balance where that kind of curve of fiat sales slows down over time, and then the token kind of takes over.
Nice. I really appreciate that, because
that makes sense.
I've played a lot of games on Immutable, and I think a lot of other games on Immutable could learn from that, because every time I try to do something, the little pop-up comes up, and it can definitely get a little frustrating when every other thing that you try to do inside the game go ahead and tries to pop up a transaction. So having that idea of just like, hey, I'm just going to buy all these shards all at once and be able to last me for a good while, that's really awesome. When talking about sort of now that you guys are actually bringing MCG leaderboard earnings, and that's going to be implemented into the game, and that idea of the spending loop, who will be able to earn those MCGs? Who will be able to climb that leaderboard? If I'm just a free-to-play player that I just learned about MetalCore through this episode today, will I be able to jump in close beta 3 if I get access and actually earn my way through to the leaderboard without an NFT? Do I need to be an NFT holder? What does that look like for someone that's just starting off?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. So there's a different kind of reward pools that we have kind of cordoned off. And one of the reward pools is basically the casual reward pool. So that's for the free-to-play player who's not super competitive in PvP. They don't own any NFTs. They're not in a major barony. You can basically just play and do your daily missions, and some small chunk of that monthly reward pool you'll get as an award at the end of the month, right? But you're basically competing with everybody who's doing that, and there's no real way to distinguish yourself. It's just like a very small chunk of rewards that you get essentially as a daily reward for playing the game, right? If you want a bigger chunk of potential rewards, there's a couple ways to do it. One, you can be really, really good at PvP. So you could place at the top of the PvP leaderboards. In order to do that, you would have to join, if you're a free-to-play player, you'd either have to join a barony that qualifies for the PvP leaderboards. You'd have to either become a premium, or level up your account to a premium account, or own some NFT so that you could basically create your own barony that would, because only premium baronies, like baronies with certain status, are allowed on the PvP leaderboard. So either you as a free-to-play player are allowed to just join one that has already done that, or you can make your own and kind of essentially convert yourself from free-to-play to premium player, right? So the pathway for a free-to-play player is convince a Baron who has created a premium barony
so good that a Baron
you're
wants
really good. Yeah, like you're gonna help that barony climb to the top of the leaderboard. So you should recruit me, and then I'll come in and help. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. On this topic, just while we're talking about like the earning of the tokens, I know this is like a pretty broad question. I'm not trying to trap you with something real specific, but just the idea of every time I see a game go live that has any kind of earning mechanic, the question retail is asking is, hey, how much can I earn? And we're talking about how you earn, who can earn. So if I was like peak possible earnings, so maybe I am the top of the leaderboard, maybe I am winning in all of those things, what will earning generally look like? And then maybe versus like middle of the pack, I'm playing the game all the time. Maybe it's my main game. I'm not horrible at it. What does earning look like?
So we plan to reward the top 1,000 players on each leaderboard, and there's different leaderboards as well. There's the Barony focus leaderboards. There's the PvP like ranking leaderboard, which is basically like what is your actual ranking, and then there's the how many metal cores have you captured. So metal cores are this thing in our game where they basically just fall. They could be a PvP objective. Sometimes they just fall randomly in the world, and then it's like a race from everyone to pick them up. So there's those multiple different leaderboards. If you're in the top 1,000, you get some reward, but the top 10, 5 to 10 players, we're thinking are going to get monthly rewards on the scale of, several tens of thousands of tokens. So anywhere from 40 to 100,000 tokens, MCG worth of tokens in first season, right? So this
Cool.
July monthly it's not really a season, it's just a monthly leaderboard, right? Our seasons are going to be 3 months long, quarterly basically. But in this first month, you could expect being top of that solo leaderboard, you would get maybe 100,000 MCG, something like that.
Sick.
If you were to actually be in the Barony leaderboard, that's a little bit different because the Barony leaderboard is much higher prizes, but they also get distributed amongst Barony, right? So it
Right.
depends on how
Which
many
is like a
people actually are
clan.
in your. Right. It's like a clan, right? So if you're like number one Barony, you're going to potentially get 10 or 100 times more than you would get as an individual player, but then it also has to get distributed out amongst the Barony, right? So, and then on top of that, we would also have individual tournaments too. So besides just the leaderboard, there might be specific events where we like do an invite list of top players to say you're going to win some legendary NFT or whatever, right? So there's a bunch of different potential rewards available, different ways to win.
I have just a quick one-off
Susan.
question. With this idea of that PvP and aspects and leaderboard, will you guys ever host tournaments throughout this next month, next season? Will there be tournaments of like, hey, we're going to get the best Baronies and we're just going to fight it out and see who comes out top dog? I know that sort of is already the leaderboard. Will there be smaller, closer, more curated experiences for that you guys will be able to create content around?
Yeah, we specifically are planning on Barony War tournaments. So we are planning on basically taking our top Baronies, the top 8 of them or however many, and then just putting them into a double elimination tournament and seeing who comes out on top. So that is already being planned for. So we're organizing a lot of our more exclusive events, prizes, tournaments, rewards, etc., around Baronies. So we really believe in that as a social feature, and we really want players to try to recruit one another, form really competitive Baronies, and then in order to participate within a Barony, you're gonna, in order to be on these leaderboards, you do need a premium Barony. So you can play as a free-to-play Barony and just do it as a social thing and play with your friends, and that's all fine. But if you want to be like one of these top 8 tournament Baronies, right? Invited to one of the tournaments, you're going to need to be like highly ranked, and you're going to require premium status, right? So that's going to be one of the main things that we think is going to drive players to join the game, band together, and is really a way for there's different player taxonomies, right? Like there's that free to play player who's like, I'm just really good. I don't want to spend any money, but I want to prove to you that I can make your Barony win. And then there's that person who's the organizer, and maybe they're interested in spending money in the game. Maybe they're a whale. Maybe they have free money to spend, but they're just interested in being that Barony leader, that Baron, who's kind of taking home like the majority of the cash prize, but also is responsible for organizing everybody and getting people to come in. And we want to reward those people because we see them as valuable members of the community. Bring people in, recruit them to your Barony, and recruit them to MetalCore, and convince them that there's something to this, right?
What does it cost to launch a paid premium Barony?
Yeah, so we don't have our prices set yet, but it's basically going to be a monthly. It's essentially going to function like a Discord Nitro boost. So all the members of your Barony can contribute in the form of shards to boost your Barony into premium status. So depending on how many members you have, it might cost different amounts.
Got it.
Excuse me. So we're still setting those prices. But yeah, you can also choose, like, do I as a Barony leader want to shoulder that myself and take on the price of boosting my own Barony because I'm also the one who reaps most of the rewards, or is this more of like a communal thing and a bunch of friends who want to get together and kind of split it equally, right? So you guys can kind of decide that amongst yourselves.
Do Baronies go live in closed beta 3, or is it live at some other point?
So we are going to be, we don't have all the features around premium Baronies act live in closed beta 3 right in like 4 days, right? instead, what we're doing is we're having our community team organize specific events with our top barons who have already kind of recruited hundreds of players to their. There are some baronies out there that have like 200 players in them already, right? So we're specifically kind of earmarking, here's our top barons, organizing special tournaments just for them, and creating kind of manual leaderboards almost for them, and almost kind of manual premium status for them. But kind of I would say probably end of summer, early fall is when we'd be transitioning to a more in-game version of that system.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. That's really cool. I think those are the kind of things that like get me real interested. And I think it adds another dynamic that Web3 is going to be especially interested in. A lot of the times, like I'll look at a game because I came from the background of like being in DeFi and broader crypto for years before ever coming over to Web3 gaming. And so I'll look at things like that and ask, hey, if I was just an investor that saw this game's going to be successful, where do I get involved? And this is the type of areas that people who maybe I'm not playing as often, but I really believe in the capacity of this game to succeed. Maybe that's where I get involved. And betting on the players themselves and not just the game. It's like it's doubling down. I dig it. I have one more question about the token. Specifically with the MCG token, in game, it's just used to buy shards. So it's like a solid sink for it. Is like outside of the game, are there specific use cases that you guys have identified yet?
Yeah, I mean, you can use it to purchase our crates, which are basically like crates of units, and there's some randomness there too of like what you're going to get. So completely outside the game, you can get MCG. You can use it on the immutable web store to purchase MetalCore crates. You can open those crates, see what you got, trade those items on open marketplaces for MCG, and then open more crates, right? So like all of that exists outside the game. We are also planning on implementing quite a bit of the Barony management side of things, some of the account management side, etc., into our web app. So our website is we're kind of focusing a lot of work on that right now, and making sure that you can do a lot of the management stuff that, for instance, certain players. Let's say you're a player who owns a lot of NFTs. You're not necessarily a hardcore gamer, but you are interested in this whole Barony thing, and you're more the organizational type player. You're more the general kind of player type who doesn't want to play a shooter but wants to organize their players. We want to create a really great web experience for you to be able to basically manage your Barony, to lend your NFTs to players, to set your commission rates for like the marks that they win so that you get a share of that, and to kind of like set goals for people and communicate with people and say what it is you want to see out of your Barony, right? And I'll do all that on the web, right? So that all of that is stuff that we have plans for, but we also have plans to create like non-hardcore PC game experiences in the MetalCore world, right? So this isn't going to be our only game within the universe of MetalCore. We're already working on kind of like a simulation tactics game as well, and other types of potential entries that would be for players who aren't necessarily interested in a PC shooter.
Nice. I really like that because I'm a kind of person that really does enjoy the PvP, but I have been trying to get my wife into a lot of games. She really enjoyed New World as her first MMO. So, but I'm trying to get her to go from that MMO of like, hey, you can just run around and go kill NPCs and not really have to worry about getting killed out in the open world, to try to get a transition to something like this right away might be a big shock. But having those experiences for someone who maybe is a lot more chill, wants to just have a vibe with some friends and go on a quick raid, I think that's really going to be helpful for a different kind of player set. I do have one final question here, just because I know in previous betas you had played airdrops and ways that people would just come in and really get incentivized for trying out the game. Is that still going to continue with closed beta 3, or are you guys more focusing on that, hey, now you're actually going to be able to do those daily earnings from those missions that you guys were talking about?
Yeah, now we're basically in, like, all of that was kind of our pre-TGE push. Now we're in what we consider kind of our main cycle, our main economy cycle. So, what we're doing now, starting in July, is really what the entire game is going to be about, which is that you play the game, and then at the end of the month, based on how good you were, or how much you played, or what NFTs you own, what NFTs you own, and what those kind of enabled you to do within the game. You're gonna get a reward of some MCG, and then instead of play to airdrop, it's play to kind of win MCG, and then that MCG you can do whatever you want with it, right? Do you want to use it to progress your units better, to make the NFTs better, to try to level one up to maximize it and then sell it on the open marketplace? Do you want to just max out your account because you just want to be a super competitive, like you were number 50 on the leaderboard and you want to be number 1 next season, right? Or do you want to just sell the MCG, or whatever you want to do, right? So all of that is open to players starting.
That is really awesome, because I think we talked about this a lot in a lot of other episodes and spaces that we do. We feel like we've been talking about like play to airdrops and games are starting off, and we don't really see a lot of games transition to that next part. And I think MetalCore is going to be one of the first to really say like, all right, we're out of that play to airdrop, we're out of that sort of early stage. Now we're actually going to see if this in-game economy that we've been talking about, that we've been working towards, actually works in practicality. And that's really exciting, but also I can imagine it's really scary, because this is where a lot of things can break. And so I'm really hoping that everything goes well in closed beta 3. We're going to be in there really enjoying the game and trying a lot of those stuff out. But go ahead, Matthew.
I was just curious. Do you guys have like a time frame for closed beta 3? Is this the final closed beta? I guess I should include that.
It's probably not going to be the final closed beta. I don't know if we're going to continue with like the closed beta 3. We were using kind of closed beta 1, 2, 3 because there was big periods of downtime in between them. We're probably not going to have significant downtime anymore. So after now, with the launch of closed beta 3, the game is just going to be live for probably about 2 months. And our guess is that our next major milestone is going to be like end of August, early September. And that's going to come with a bunch of new Barony features, new social features, like major new economy stuff, like the ability to upgrade your NFTs and like burn them so that you can upgrade other ones, and like new loops and stuff. But yeah, I don't know if we're going to call that closed beta 4 or what we're gonna call it, but we're probably not going to have a full like month of downtime like we did between closed beta 2 and closed beta 3 anymore.
Sweet. Makes sense. Man, I'm excited. I am excited to play. I'm excited to get our community to play with us. Maybe at some point launch a 100x Barony. If people are stoked about what you've got cooking, closed beta 3, TGE, right after I listen to this episode, where should I go next?
Yeah, head over to metalcore.gg. And that's our website. You can find everything there. You'll learn about our TGE. You'll learn about our primary sales that we're gonna do. You'll learn how the best way for yourself to get a beta key. We have a wait list, but there's like a couple 100,000 people on it. So if you want guaranteed access to CB3 when it launches in a couple days, you can also jump over and purchase one of our founders packs or grab an NFT, and we'll make sure that everybody who owns an NFT gets a key and gets access to the game. And yeah, that's basically it.
Easy. Awesome. Hey, if you're listening to this episode, go show Dan and the crew from MetalCore some love. And I'll also say, nothing I ever said was investment advice or anything like that. I'm just excited. This was not a paid episode. Dan didn't pay us to come on here. We're just genuinely stoked to see these guys kick butt and participate in the game and play the game. You guys are right up my alley. So thank you, Dan, for joining us. And we'll see you next time on 100X.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.